What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Our first question comes from Ryan, who asks if we could see Star Wars characters getting their own TV series, since Marvel recently announced that Loki and Scarlet Witch would be getting their own. If so, which characters do we think deserve to have their stories told on the small screen?
Yes, I hope so. I really do.
Yeah.
That news was very exciting to me, that they would be willing to bring back Tom Hiddleston and Elizabeth Olsen to play their respective characters. And yeah, it kind of gives me hope for Solo, especially. That's a story I want to see continued, and I feel like it would fit very well on the small screen. So yeah, let's bring back Han, Chewie. I would actually be more interested in seeing what Darth Maul and Kira are up to. I really want to know what he's got brewing and how he wound up on Malachor in Star Wars Rebels. Some sort of war with the Hutts, I think, would be awesome. So those are my hopes. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, some people have said, oh, they don't think that the big movie stars are willing to do shows, TV shows, stuff on the small screen, but especially...
I think I said that.
Yeah.
Some people.
But we're talking about a Disney streaming service, and I feel like they're getting some big fat checks offered to them to do these things, especially with the Marvel characters mentioned here, because they're guaranteed pretty much to be in future films. So yeah, I think having the big screen actors transition over to the Disney streaming service is a great idea.
Yeah, and I mean, I was more talking about when I said that some actors probably wouldn't be willing to come back for small screen. I was more talking about Luke in reference to doing a show about the Young Jedi Academy. I think I would take that back. I mean, it was more of an age thing, I think, that they would need to age him down. But if he started his academy later in life, I mean, obviously they made him look younger in The Last Jedi. So I think that there's potential there. I also think that Ewan McGregor, for example, would be willing to play Kenobi because he has done TV. He's done Fargo. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, and as far as characters we want to see, I definitely want to see more of Maul and Kira than the Crimson Dawn story. I read the Tales from Vandor book, which is like a little kind of story book that was a branch off from Solo, and there was a line in it that said something like we're definitely going to see more of Kira. And it was... Yeah,
it was like, remember that name. I think you'll see a lot more of her.
Yeah, and that's coming from the bartender at the lodge on Vandor, so...
It still felt like a tongue-in-cheek, like, she'll be back.
Yeah, so I read that and I was like, oh, this is kind of giving me a little bit of hope to see her come back.
Fingers crossed.
Steve Shaw wants to know if we think speculation videos can damage the expectations of fans before a film's release, or does it just build hype? Well, after having just recorded one...
Yeah, buckle up for tomorrow's video. I mean, yes and no. I think that some people can get a little too attached to their own speculations. I think it's all about just ownership and realizing that we don't own this story just because there's something that we want to tell. There's a story we have in mind. It doesn't mean that that's what the storytellers want to do, and that's fine. They have earned the right to tell these stories. We haven't. So it's fun to think about, oh, where might this go? But you have to leave all of that at the door when you sit down in the theater to see the movie.
Right.
Just because you like something doesn't mean that that's the best way to go. And so, yeah, it's fun to speculate. I think that that's a lot of the fun leading up to a Star Wars movie, but it's just, realize that it's not the end all be all, and ultimately they are telling the story and we are not. So just let it go.
I mean, the perfect example of this is Snoke. After The Force Awakens, everybody was kind of blown away by this idea of Snoke being this super powerful dark side user that seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. And after the movie came out, everybody just started going wild with who is he, where he's from, and that, I think, kind of built up a ton of hype for Snoke's character. And that let a lot of people down after what happened to him in The Last Jedi.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect example, because people weren't so much disappointed that their theory wasn't right. It was that we didn't learn anything at all. And I still don't really know why people latched onto Snoke so much. To me, he was always just generic bad guy number 3. And I didn't really care who he was. I definitely didn't think he was someone like Mace Windu. Like, a lot of these things just seemed so crazy. And the thing was that they were never planning on, in The Last Jedi, talking about his origins, because they had that script, like, in the can before The Force Awakens came out.
Mm-hmm.
So now they were probably like, oh, crap. Like, all these people care, but it's like, that's not what we're filming. That's not the story that we're going to tell. So, yeah, those kinds of things, too. It's like, you have to keep in mind that what you think is important isn't necessarily important.
I'm sure one of the reasons, or maybe the main reason why people got so excited about his character is that he was a super powerful dark side user, which we didn't really have since Palpatine.
Right.
So that's probably why.
I mean, yeah, he's intriguing, but think about Palpatine and how we were introduced to him in The Empire Strikes Back. He was mentioned in A New Hope, and then we finally see him in Return of the Jedi, and then he dies, like Snoke does. We didn't get backstory on him for quite a while, and it's going to be the same thing with Snoke, I feel, because the story is about Rey and Kylo Ren.
Yes.
It is not about Snoke, but we will, I'm sure, get some answers sooner or later.
Ron Barron asks, how soon after episode 9 do we think we will see stories that take place afterwards?
That's a tough question to answer. I kind of think that they're going to focus on filling in the gaps between episodes 6 and 7, more, and probably episodes 8 and 9. I think that's where they will kind of stop. I feel like they want to leave the future a little more open-ended. They're not going to really start diving into that until they have to. They probably want to see what movies they want to take place post episode 9.
Yeah, we just got an announcement today, the day that we're filming this, that Bob Iger has said that they're expecting to see a major slowdown in Star Wars movies. So I think stories in general that take place after 9, it'll be probably a while before we start seeing those pop up.
I think they'll probably, if our speculation that hopefully isn't damaging is correct, I think that they'll probably say, what major event do we think happens after 9? And I think that will be the next trilogy, or the first time that they explore that area. I think before they go post 9, they're probably going to go pre-episode 1. I think they're going to start exploring what happened before all of the Skywalker saga, because, I mean, A, they know fans are clamoring for it. B, I don't know, I guess the future is, like, limitless. They can go that way forever. So I think defining what the universe looked like before the Skywalker saga is going to be a little less daunting. So I think they're going to focus on that area first. Episode 9, after that, it might take some time.
Yeah. I will say that one of the stories that I definitely hope we see that does take place after 9 is Rey. I just want to know what she's up to after 9. Maybe it'll have some stuff about what she was up to in the middle of the movies too, because we haven't gotten a whole lot of inner monologue of Rey so far.
I think that's a great point. I think that they actually might explore immediately after 9 more quickly, because Daisy Ridley, while I think she's going to leave it open-ended, I don't think she's going to say, I'm done with Rey after episode 9. She has also said some things to the effect of, like, I want to explore my career outside of Star Wars. I don't think she wants to be locked into that forever. So if that's the case, then they might start saying, well, we're free to tell some Rey stories immediately post 9. And then if they go 10 years into the future, it's like, that's fine, because we can jump 100 years ahead for the next trilogy or whatever of films that we want to do. So
Right.
Immediately post 9, I think, is a little more of a safe bet.
iRebel wants to know if Maul's appearance in Solo is a sign that Lucasfilm will include more connections in the future films, or was it just a one-time thing?
I don't think it was a one-time thing. I think that was them kind of dipping their toe into, let's see how people react to this, because the hardcore fans are going to get it immediately, and the more casual fans, let's see how they feel about it. Will they then dive into the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, or will they just go to YouTube and figure out what's happening? I mean, I think that it was a good way to start generating interest around the world outside of the film. So yeah, I think that was the shape of things to come, I hope.
And I think that we're getting a new generation of Star Wars fans that grew up on things like the Clone Wars, and Maul was in the Clone Wars, and so we could be seeing a lot more characters from these television shows that kids have kind of grown up on, and with these characters that they loved.
Yeah, and I hope they keep going a little deeper and a little deeper every time. I hope we see Grand Admiral Rey Sloane in Episode 9. I don't think we will, because it kind of sounds like she might be dead. But I don't know. I would love to see book and comic characters also make their way into the films.
Yes.
Even if it's just little side background things.
Bryler Ham asks, what short stories exist in the Star Wars canon, and where can they be found?
I would look on Wikipedia's page. I'll link to it in the description. They have a great list of every piece of Star Wars canon content, and then you can just signal, like, I just want to look at the short stories. And you already mentioned Perfect Weapon, which is a great short story. A lot of them were printed in Star Wars Insider, and they're hard to get, but it looks like StarWars.com is slowly putting them out. So I think all of the Blade Squadron stories, of which there are 3, you can see those on StarWars.com. I think there are a handful of others, but there are also collections like Creatures Great and Small, which has some great stories in it. That was from The Force Awakens. The Canto Bite Book is a collection of short stories. So yeah, I would just look on Wikipedia for a complete list. But
I think they have everything like color coded too, right, where it says like this was a novel, this was a young adult novel, this is a young reader novel, short story.
Right,
like
and you can basically tell it like, I just want the color for short stories, and it'll give you only those short stories, and you can find out when they were published and where. And a lot of them, like if you just Google it, the ones that are available will come up. The ones that are only in Star Wars Insider right now are a little hard to get a hold of, but I think they will eventually be released to the public. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon, where we left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained content, like our long-form video podcast called Between Two Suns. We just did a new episode, and this time we're talking about a little contradiction that was in this week's Star Wars comic. We discussed John Kasdan's notes on Solo: A Star Wars Story, which sparked a little controversy online. The 10th anniversary of The Force Unleashed. And
make sure to stick around to the end of those episodes where we have our little Master and Apprentice trivia training, where Alex is slowly getting me up to speed on Star Wars trivia.
So yeah, follow the link in the description to check all that out.
On to YouTube questions. Hamburglar asks how we think the Republic would have ended up if Fives had been able to clearly communicate the truth about Order 66 to Anakin.
I don't know.
Don't know.
Yeah. Next question. No, I don't know. Because he didn't, I don't know, he didn't have the full story, I don't think. He knew that Palpatine was up to something. I just don't know if they would have, I don't know, the Jedi seemed just so kind of inept at the end of the Clone Wars. Like, they found out all this stuff at the end of Season 5 and Season 6, and they just didn't follow through. It's like, I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. Oh well. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. We may have better insight on this when we start our Clone Wars rewatch, which is going to be coming up soon.
Yeah. So we'll try to focus on that. But honestly, I just don't know what Anakin would have done. Like, he seemed to really trust Palpatine. Palpatine had taken him under his wing from a fairly young age. So I don't know that he would have believed Fives, but I don't know. That's all I can say is I don't know over and over again.
You stumped him, guys.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some more answers in Season 7.
Nelkir San van Balgroof wants to know if Sidious knew about the superweapon on Malachor, and if so, why didn't he use it?
I assumed that he knew. He and Maul visited Malachor before, but it seems like all that superweapon did was petrify people on that planet.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was much use to him at all.
Or maybe he didn't know enough about it yet, and was just kind of keeping it in his journals as like one of those things to do.
Learn more about Big Scary Temple.
Yeah.
Maybe. I just, even if he did know what it was and what it did, I don't think it would have been much use to him unless he could like trick all the Jedi into coming there.
Or maybe he left it there on purpose for the Rebels, the Star Wars Rebels team to find it.
I don't think he would do that. I just think that, I don't know. I mean, he left the holocron there. I don't know why he and Maul didn't venture inside, or maybe he just didn't want that holocron for some reason, but I figure that he knew what it was and he just didn't care about it because it seemed pretty much located and stuck on that one planet.
Yeah. Julia asks what time period we want the next series of films to cover.
Kind of already talked about this, but I'm hoping they go back in history. I hope we get into some Old Republic stuff. Let's get Mandalorian Wars, Jedi versus Sith, like back when the Sith were far more numerous. I think something like that would be really interesting to explore. Familiar, but different. I think that would be the next place that they should go.
Yeah, fans have been clamoring for Old Republic content basically since they announced new movies, period. So, yeah, I agree. Old Republic.
Even before that, once they made Legends a thing, they were like, what about all our Old Republic stuff? Like, bring it back. I want it back. And I do too.
Yeah, there's such a wealth of content there that they could explore. Like you said, the Mandalorian Wars have already been brought up in Star Wars Rebels, so that would be a perfect place to start. The Nintendo nerd wants to know how Dooku gets away with war crimes when the CIS senators tell him not to.
I think that episode of the Clone Wars was to show that there is good and evil on both sides, and that the entirety of the Confederacy of Independent Systems weren't just evil people. But I think that Dooku, since he had the backing of basically the Republic as well, I think he got away with whatever he wanted to. And maybe the CIS Senate didn't even know about everything that he had done. That stuff probably, I don't know, trickled in through news sources, and it's like, who's to say that it's not just Republic propaganda? There were probably plenty of ways that Dooku could spin that kind of stuff, but I think that the point of that episode was more to show that not everyone was on board with war crimes as part of the CIS.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that he got away with that stuff because ultimately they're the bad guys, but there are also good guys in there too.
Jedi Spartan asks if the Chiss were to appear in Episode 9, would their role be similar to the Mon Calamari in Return of the Jedi, supplying ships and crew to the Resistance?
I think if they were to appear, which I would love it if they did, I think that'd be the perfect way to implement them, honestly. Like, let's just have them be a new alien race to most people. Like, the casual fan would just be like, oh, it's blue humanoid people with red eyes, cool. Yeah. And because it's like the same thing as Return of the Jedi. We're like, oh, we got fish people now, sweet. And yeah, the Chiss could just be there. They could have their very fancy looking ships that we've seen in the Thrawn comic. Mm-hmm. They could have their own starfighters and stuff. And yeah, we would just see Chiss crew and pilots, and you wouldn't have to explain that. But to us, it would be super exciting.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to what the story group wants to do with Thrawn. Because we've talked about this before. If Thrawn comes back, does he go back to the bad guys, which are now the First Order? Does he stay neutral? Is he going to be more interested in the Resistance? It kind of depends on him, I think.
Yeah, and they might not have that answer yet, so I'm not banking on the Chiss showing up. I'd love it if they did. I'm not expecting it, but if they were to do it...
Maybe in future movies.
Yeah, if they were to do it, I think that is the way to do it. That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel,
and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.